So welcome everybody. I'm Debra Franke. I am in the Alumni Relations Office at LaSalle University, and I'm just going to talk today and very open to questions. In no way is this a formal presentation, but going to be talking about our Job Shadow program. Our mascot is the LaSalle Explorer. And so we have named our Job Shadow program the Explorer Shadow Program. And the image that you see on the screen there, since I don't have lots of fancy slides to show you, was a photo that we took of our mascot in one of my colleagues' offices to stick on an email to our alumni last year and for our shadow program. So let me start just by telling you a little bit about LaSalle. We have about 5,100 students. A third of those are first generation, first in their family to go to college. On our alumni population, we have around 60,000, of which 51,000 are contactables. And LaSalle has three schools: the School of Business, School of Arts and Sciences, School of Nursing and Health Sciences. And so as I mentioned, I'm in the Alumni Relations Office. We have a staff of 4, and our Career Center has a staff of 4, along with one administrative person. So what got us into the Job Shadow business? It was actually a lot of people think, there's been mention over the years, gee, that would be a good idea. But the real impetus, the real spark for this came from a committee of the Alumni Association Board of Directors. So our Alumni Association Board has several committees, one of which is the Career Committee. I sit on that committee along with members of the board and a few people, other people that are on that. And the idea of a job shadow came up, and there was just a real strong interest in making that happen at LaSalle. So that's really where the initial impetus came from. And it kind of explains why someone in the Alumni Relations Office is the project lead on making the shadow happen. The other reason that I took a major role in making it happen is that at the time that we started to think about doing this, our Career Center was understaffed and could not take on anything additional at the time. As I said, feel free to at any point ask a question. You can just do that by speaking or typing in the chat box over there. So the very first thing I did is what some of you are doing right now, which is I researched what other programs at other schools. And I started by going online and looking for information about job shadow programs, both in terms of what was on their website in the Career Services Office, as well as on the alumni side. I am part of a national professional association called the Alumni Career Services Network. And that is all people who do what I do, who provide career services, programming, and resources to alumni at colleges and universities. And so I already knew of several schools through that professional association that had job shadow programs, and started with them, and then just did some online research and found some other ones, and just began to explore. And then myself and 2 members of this of the career committee from the board actually set up phone calls, kind of similar to what we're doing today. And we talked with the person or persons who oversee the job shadow program at 6 different schools. And I am glad to send these notes that I'm using today to any of you. All you need to do is shoot me an email, and I'll be glad to do that. And that will include, these were the questions that we developed for those phone calls. And those were, 15 to 30-minute phone calls, learning more about their program and how they run it. So any questions so far? All right. And I also just started reading some articles to learn more about job shadows and the kind of the different formats they took, so that we could then begin to think about, well, what's our strategy going to be? What are our parameters going to be? What kind of timeline? So one of the key things is, how long is your shadow going to be? And we decided pretty quickly we're looking at doing a one-day shadow. Some schools have like 3-day or week-long shadows. Um, in some schools, it's not the entire school, but it's like one department that has the shadow program, or one, like it might be the school of business, but not the entire university. And they have somebody who's coordinating, that week-long shadow. But we wanted something that could eventually become university-wide, and we just thought it made sense to just stick with the one-day shadow, unless an employer already has an existing program that is more than one day. And we were certainly open to having our students participate in any kind of structured shadow program that a company's already organized. So that would be the exception to that. We also decided for our initial pilot to do it during spring break. So we actually ran our pilot in March of 2017. And our spring break is 1 week long. So initially we said all the shadows would take place during that time. I think probably one of the most key things that we decided as part of our strategy, and some of this was based on experience with other programs that I had collaborated with the Career Center, is this third item here, that we were not going to create a job shadow program and then have the Career Center market it to the students. That we were going to create a program, but have all the marketing, all the communication with the students be done by the academic departments. And we just saw this as a really, really crucial piece of our strategy. And we thought that as a result of that, the students would be more likely to sign up. They would have someone in their department to go to with questions. If there was any concern about a student signing up but not participating or whatever, the department would handle that and to have a talk with them about what it means to be a professional. And also it would help us to control how many host sites we were trying to develop over time, if we were targeting certain departments rather than the whole university. And the academic department therefore has to say, yes, this is something we want to be part of. We see this as important for our students. And part of that is that that department then has to designate what I called a job, or call a job shadow liaison. That could be a faculty or staff member, but it's someone in the department who is going to handle all that marketing and communication with faculty and students. Any questions about anything so far from anybody? We also decided that the departments themselves would determine what kind of criteria, if any, they wanted to have for which students would be eligible for the job shadow. So for instance, I know in our chemistry department, they thought it made most sense for juniors and seniors to participate. Whereas in our communication department, they thought it made the most sense for freshmen and sophomore to communicate, because by the time the students were junior and seniors, they're already doing internships. Some departments have a GPA criteria. Other departments don't. In any case, every student, down here it says student application, every student has to upload a resume to our Career Center's Simplicity platform. And they also have to submit to the Job Shadow Liaison just a short little statement, 100 to 150 words, explain why you're interested in participating, what you hope to get out of the shadow experience. And so that part, I decided that all students would need to do those things. But again, any other criteria is up to the department. So we decided to run this pilot in March of 2017 with initially 4 departments. I was thinking 1 from School of Business, 1 from School of Nursing, and 1 from the arts side of Arts and Sciences, 1 from the science side of Arts and Sciences. We ended up initially with 5 departments for our pilot, and then as things progressed, 2 of them, 1 dropped out because of the liaison just said, I just can't add this to my plate right now. And then 1 department said that they were not able to find any students who were able to participate during spring break. So we ended up doing 3 departments for the pilot. And we also decided for the pilot that we would only focus on alumni to act as the host sites. And would in the future open it up to other employers who had a relationship with the Career Center, but initially we would just start with alumni. So we in Alumni Relations see this Job Shadow program as a great way to engage our alumni who might not otherwise be engaged with the university. We also said for the pilot, we're based in Philadelphia. So for the pilot, we were just looking at offering shadows in the Philadelphia area, and again, that it would be done over spring break. One of the key questions we had to answer is how are we going to do the matching between students and hosts? And we knew we didn't want to do that by hand with a big spreadsheet or lots of Post-it notes on somebody's table somewhere. And so one of the options was to use our Career Center's Simplicity platform. Another option was to purchase a separate platform of a mentor matching type program that we could use for the Job Shadow. And so one of the questions I had when I talked to various schools was, how do you do the matching? Do you do that basically by hand, or do you have some sort of platform or a system that helps you do that? As I looked into that, the Simplicity platform has a Job Shadow module, and it looked like that might work for us. And so then I specifically targeted an additional 5 schools who used Simplicity for their Job Shadow matching, and spoke with them in great detail about what aspects of that worked well for them, if they had any areas that didn't work so well, how they used it, what parts of the platform they used, et cetera, et cetera. And one person in particular offered to send me all the correspondence, all the emails that they use, both with the employer hosts as well as with the students. And I found that extremely, extremely helpful. So I am more than glad for any of you to do the same, to send you a package, as it were, of all the communication, all the emails that that I developed during the pilot and am now using as we expand it this year. So let's see, I've already talked about the student application, and the other key piece of the strategy and timeline was that the Career Center, during the pilot, the one piece that they did do was to provide an orientation for students. So this is after the students had applied to their Job Shadow Liaison and been approved, but before they actually the shadow took place. This was an orientation to talk about, to help them think about the Job Shadow, how to prepare for it, how to get the most out of it, that kind of thing. We offered, I believe it was 2 or 3 live sessions during a particular week, and we also recorded that so that if they couldn't attend a live session, they could watch the recording. If they did watch the recording, they were required to answer, I believe it was 2 questions, and email that to me as sort of proof that they had actually watched that recorded session. And that orientation was pretty, I think, very crucial to help students understand kind of how serious this is, and that they really did need to take some time to prepare, but also to help them realize how much they can get out of it if they handled it well. And we actually, after the fact, students commented how important that orientation was. So let me pause there and see if any of you have any questions at this point. Okay, I'm going to just barrel on. So some of the communication, so in terms of this pilot last March, I began by meeting with the provost and speaking with him. Not surprisingly, he was very enthusiastic, but just wanted to key him in terms of our plans. Then met with each dean of the 3 schools, letting them know I had already met with the provost and asking them to suggest which department would be part of the pilot. And so from that, actually in the School of Arts and Sciences, if you recall, I had said my original thought was that we would have 2 from there. The dean suggested 3 departments for there, and then we had 1 from the school business and 1 from nursing and health sciences, so 5 total. So the deans talked to the department chairs, then I followed up and talked to each department chair, answered any questions they had, and then let them know they needed to designate a job shadow liaison for their department. So then all of my interaction after that was through the job shadow liaison. I also then began recruiting alumni for hosts for students from those 5 departments, and did some general recruiting by using our monthly alumni e-newsletter, put an article in there, did an email blast to all the alumni in the Philadelphia area in those 5 majors that we were targeting for the pilot. Put out a LinkedIn group announcement from our LinkedIn group. I contacted our prospect managers in advancement, who just happened to be right down the hall from me, and asked them if they had any prospects they were working with that they thought might be interested. I asked for suggestions from the liaisons, and then I emailed specific alumni, and I did a lot of LinkedIn searches looking for alumni that I thought might be good candidates to be hosts. It's a fun matching game because you want to have enough host sites that when the students go in and look at the sites that are available to them, they have some things to pick from. But you don't want to have so many host sites that aren't selected that you have to give them the news, thank you for participating, but nobody selected your site. So anyway, it's a fun matching game from that respect. Again, all the initial communication with the students was done by the liaisons. As once the matches were made, then I communicated directly with the students at that point. And then I handled all the communication with the potential hosts and the alumni who actually posted job descriptions, and then the ones that were and were not selected. So any questions on the communication stream there? Question here, can you share a copy of the Career Services workshop presentation and handouts? I will be glad to do that. And what I'm just going to do is highlight this here to remind myself to do that. But yes, I will be glad to. And so it's going to be a PowerPoint presentation. I will send you a link to the recorded version as well as the handouts that they used. So you'll have all of that. And that is exactly what we did in preparing ours. I think I had collected 4 or 5 orientations from other schools, and we kind of looked through those and made a list of here's the key points that we want to make. So very glad to share that. Okay, so a little more about our pilot that we ran in March. One thing I did was I kept track of all the correspondence that I was creating. I'm a big believer in trying to create systems so that when you repeat a program, you've already got half of it in place the next time around. As I mentioned, 3 departments ended up participating for a total of 19 student host matches. And as it turns out, I find out after the matches have been made and I've let the students and hosts know about it, that 3 of the students weren't able to do their match during spring break, even though we had very clearly said you must be able to do this during spring break for the purposes of the pilot. So anyway, so in each of those cases, the alum host was open to rescheduling it for another day that was mutually convenient. I also just kept a document of kind of lessons learned as we did the pilot. I highly recommend if you're starting a program to do a small pilot. We had a goal of let me think, 25, 30 matches total, and we only did 19. And so you might say, well, gee, you weren't successful. But to be honest with you, my goal was to keep it very small and to learn. And we achieved that goal. We learned what worked well. We learned some things, some communications that needed to be clearer the next time. Um, and so in that respect, for me, I achieved all the goals I had for the pilot. But I did keep a document as things came up. Gee, we need to communicate about this clearer, or here's something that came up that I hadn't anticipated. I just kept that all in one document. So when I got ready to do it the next time, I pulled that out and said, okay, what am I going to do about this? And we did do a survey of students afterwards to get feedback from them. And here's some things that we learned from the pilot that we're going to continue with the liaison model, driving this through the academic departments, having them do the initial marketing with students. We had a potential alumni host who works from home. I hadn't anticipated that. So we've now added some additional language into the FAQ document for our hosts about situations like that. We realized that job shadows in a healthcare setting, so we had a pharmacist who offered to do a shadow, but there was a list of about 12 requirements in terms of, proof of vaccination and able to do CPR and blah, 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 all kinds of stuff like that. So you just have to include all that in the job shadow description so the student is aware that they need to be able to meet all those requirements. Again, something I hadn't anticipated is some of the hosts, so the alum was sort of my contact, but they wanted all the communication to be done through an administrative person, and kind of the system I had set up for keeping track of everything didn't handle that really well. So, so any communication had to go to both of those people in that one organization. And so thinking about how to handle that better in the future. We realized because of a lot of questions that came up that we needed to clarify some of the communication to students about what the process was for getting their resume approved by the Career Center. We asked our students to take photos from their shadow day and send them, and nobody did. So that I don't know, surprised me a little, but we need to do some, if we want to get some photos, we need to do something a little more exciting than just asking them to do that. Of the 19, all but one student reported that the shadow met or exceeded or greatly exceeded expectations. The one student for whom it didn't said that the person she was matched with wasn't doing anything that interested her. So I have to kind of ask why she selected that one as one of the ones she would go to. I'm not quite sure what happened there. And we realized there were limitations with doing spring break, both from the standpoint it's just a week, and also that we have a lot of like service trips that happen during that time period. So this year we're doing for the 2017-18 school year, we're going to be doing it over winter break, which is 4 weeks, or what we're calling a mutually convenient date. So the alum, when they post the shadow opportunity in Simplicity, could say, the shadow will be held on January 10th, or MCD, or a mutually convenient date, which means then the alum is willing to schedule another day if the student wouldn't be available that day. We've expanded it from 3 departments in the pilot to 12 departments this year. The Career Center is taking a larger role in that they are recruiting employers that already have some kind of relationship with them as hosts. And so they will be recruiting them, communicating with them, and troubleshooting anything on that kind of employer host side. I will continue to kind of oversee the project, to be the link to the liaisons in the departments, and also to continue recruiting alumni hosts. We created a schedule starting in August and all the way through the end of January, and put more breathing room in. So the date that the positions have to be posted, gave ourselves a full week before students would then go in and begin selecting rather than 1 or 2 days. I created a handbook for our job shadow liaisons in the department that has all the communication, samples of all the communication that they will need, and a timeline and very specific dates and instructions for what they're responsible for. And we're considering something like the image that you see here, perhaps an 8 by 12 on thick paper of our mascot. I took the Explorer 2, and the student would write the name of the company and hold that up and get a photo taken of them with their job shadow host, and then ask them to send that photo. So maybe by having something like that, we might be a little more likely to get those photos back. So I think that ends my prepared thoughts, and again, very open to any questions you might have at this time. Any questions from anybody? The one question was about the career services handout, and somebody else asked about my email address. So that is Franke, Franke, at lasalle.edu. If you shoot me an email, I will be glad to send you that orientation. Send you any of the other material here that I've talked about in terms of the communication, the FAQs for the students and for the hosts, and answer any questions now or in the future that you may have.